Namaskar, this is Professor Aman Agarwal from Indian Institute of Finance, and I'm very happy to welcome every one of you on this another edition of the Essence of Life and Growth. And here we bring in today another special guest with us today, Mr. Madan Lal Sharma ji. He's an IPS officer. But before I introduce him, I would like to give the basic disclaimer that first of all, we are conducting all meetings, Zoom meetings, webinar meetings in accordance with the guidelines given by the Ministry of Home Affairs about 2 months back. Since 15th of April, we've been conducting these webinars, and we have conducted almost over, I would say 110 or 111 webinars so far in the last 2 months. Or most of them have been free, so people could access, and then we have been going live on Facebook and YouTube as well for almost now 2 weeks now. And so the program we are currently on is also live on Facebook for the last 15 minutes. So we will be going, we are live there as well, and we have people who watch these programs there. The second disclaimer I would like to give is that the views expressed here are those personal views of my guest as well as me as a moderator, and they are not to represent the views of the institutions either of us represents here. Thirdly, we would be keeping the videos and the audios off for everybody except for my guest and myself. We will open up the videos and audios towards the end for a question answer session after we finish with the interview we have today. And now I would like to go forward and introduce my guest, Mr. Madan Lal Sharma. He is like a father figure to me. He is a very close associate and a friend of my father, who they studied together in Delhi School of Economics. He is currently a senior advocate and founder of the Sharma and Vardhaman Associates based in Delhi, in India. And he was also the Central Information Commissioner between 2008 to 2013, representing Government of India. It's a cabinet minister position rank. And prior to that, he was former Special Director, Central Bureau of Investigation, called the CBI, which is a very important and a prominent institution, a very important pillar for the country at large. And he has handled a large number of critical cases while during his service for so many years. That's just a brief introduction. I really cannot have the capability to introduce Mr. Sharma, but for me, he is more, as I said, more like my father figure. He's more like my mentor. I've learned so much from him, and I keep learning so much from him. And it's a blessing of the God that I have had the occasion to spend times and know him much better. I will now go to Mr. Sharma, but before I begin with the interview, sir, I would request if you could give a brief history of how life has changed for you, and the perspective of life has changed for you from the very young Mr. Madan Lal Sharma, from the childhood, from teenage, who went to school, who went to college, and then someone who went to the university and started working. Before you started working, I remember you started teaching in the university and then started working for the Government of India and servicing the country. So if you could share with us a little brief perspective of your life history, of how that perspective of life and the essence of it has changed over those decades with you.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you. You are like a child to me. Thank you for having me over here. I have a very humble family background. I'm a very humble person. I was born in a small village of 150 households in a village in Rajasthan, Alwar district. I had my primary school education in the village school. In fact, the school was being run in a temple. Then I did my higher secondary school from a neighboring village, 5 to 6 kilometers away from my native village, where I used to go running morning, coming back in the evening. When I was too young, I couldn't drive a bicycle, so I used to go running on foot. And when I grew a bit, I used to go by bicycle. Thereafter, I went to the college. It was district headquarters, Alwar. So for doing well academically, I got small scholarship, and I graduated from the college in 1969, and as luck would have it, I happened to top the Rajasthan University in BA. Rajasthan University at that time was perhaps the only university in Rajasthan. Now they have more than a dozen universities there. So there were only 8 first divisioners in BA exam that year, 1969. And I happened to be number 1. There I got scholarship, and then that brought me to Delhi School of Economics. Even though I had done pass course, BA pass course, because in our college we didn't have honors course. There I studied economics, political science, and English literature. So when I wanted to take admission in Delhi School of Economics, they told me that I have done only 3 papers, so I'll not be able to compete with the boys who have done honors course for 3 years. But seeing my mark sheet and hard work that had gone behind it, they gave me the admission. So I was getting scholarship, 110 rupees a month, some money from my poor parents. So I managed to spend 2 years Delhi School of Economics like this. And after taking my master's degree, 3 or 4 months after the results, or 1 or 2 months after results were out, I got a job as a lecturer in Shri Ram College of Commerce. So I worked there as a lecturer for about a year, July 71 to July 72. In the meanwhile, I appeared in the civil service exam. To be precise, IPS. I didn't appear in the IS at that time because I thought that I have not made any preparation. I'll try next time. So I appeared in a casual manner. And this casualness sometimes helps. So I was called for the interview. The game was not very serious. I thought that since I'm not prepared, so perhaps I'll not make it. But lo and behold, the first attempt, I made it to the Indian Police Service. And best part of it is that I was allotted my home cadre, that is Rajasthan cadre. I served there in various capacities in the state of Rajasthan, district superintendent police and all that, various districts. And then after 10 years of service, I came on deputation. I volunteered to come on deputation to the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI. I worked for 4 years, and then I went back to Rajasthan and served there for another 4 or 5 years. Again, I came back to CBI. For 10 years I spent, and I did very important cases, most important cases of the day. Perhaps time doesn't permit me to speak of all these cases. If some of you are interested, I'll tell you later. So after 10 years again, I went back to Rajasthan. There, I was appointed as IG CID, Inspector General of Police, CID Crime Branch, Rajasthan. This is one of the most critical positions in the police headquarters. I served there 4 years and again came back to the central deputation. This time I couldn't come back to CBI because some rules were there that you can't come back as in the same rank in the same organization. So I went to Border Security Force, and I was posted in Siliguri, North Bengal. I served there for about 10 months, for about a year. And then again, I went on deputation to CBI as additional director. Then I became a special director. And in 2008, I took voluntary retirement from the IPS. 1 year was still left because the government had other plans. There was some block in my career progression because of political factors. So I opted out of the government, and I was appointed Central Information Commissioner, RTI Commissioner as popularly called. And I served there 5 years, and I came home, but didn't sit at home even a single day. When I was Central Information Commissioner, I did law, evening classes, Delhi University, Law Center 2. And, the college was very close to the office of the commission. After doing my work, completing my work at 6 p.m., I would go to the college, sit with 20-year-olds. I was already about 60, 61-year-old, and spent 3 years there, evening classes, took my law degree. And that happened from 2009 to 2012. I retired in 2013. Straight away, I started my own law firm. It's called Sharma and Vardhan Associates. My son is a regular lawyer. He doesn't consider me to be a regular one. So my son wanted to have a junior. And who can be better junior than a father? Because he does all the donkey's work. So this is how it is. I'm running a law firm in partnership with my son, and there are some other juniors and etc. etc. So the court work, the litigation work, my son and my juniors do, but advisory work I do. This is my life story.
Thank you for that brief introduction on your life and the way it progressed from a very humble beginning. And I know you even today lead a very humble life, a very simple life. I have seen you interacting with you for almost last 20 years, which I can see a very simple and humble life. I would also like if you can share how did the perspective of life, understanding of life, change at different stages in your life, from coming from a small town to a bigger city in the university, then from a bigger to a bigger city, and so on and so forth. How did that perspective change, or you think that perspective was constantly the same throughout your life?
See, my view of life, or perspective of life, has come from my late father. He was not educated in the literary sense of the word, but he had a lot of worldly wisdom. So he taught me one lesson. That is, I am quoting him, Niyat Saaf, Kam Ras, which means that if you have honesty of purpose, then you will succeed. Kam Ras, you will succeed in your mission. This is the advice that I have followed from my illiterate father. In modern jingo or terminology, I can say hard work and personal integrity. There is no other way to attain happiness in life and to attain some kind of material prosperity. What I'm saying is hard work plus integrity is conducive to happiness in personal life, in your family life, in your professional life, everywhere. Only integrity is not good enough. Only hard work is also not good enough. You work very hard, but your motivations are perverse or perverted. Then you are working for yourself. You are not working for the nation.
Correct.
So hard work accompanied by integrity. And integrity is two kinds. One is fiscal integrity, and second is intellectual integrity. If you can have both integrities plus hard work, God helps you. And in the ultimate analysis, without luck factor, nothing happens. Even though luck plays 5% part in life, but this 5% is so important that the remaining perspiration, inspiration and perspiration, the remaining 5% is of no avail. So when these two things are there, these two attributes are there in you, the luck also to some extent helps you.
True. I agree with you what you said, that this is a good combination of hard work, integrity, and luck. So, these are, I understand, are the key essential factors which are important in the essence of life. But, most of my speakers who I've interviewed in the last 2 months from different walks of life have talked about the fact that there is a key critical role in terms of positivity and happiness which needs to be binded in if you want to really enjoy the essence of life. And for that positivity to be built up, we need to look at a life which has spirituality, which has soul consciousness and meditation. Do you think these are key critical factors as well from your own perspective?
I'm so glad, Aman, that you have brought an element of spirituality. I was reading the biography of Sarvapalli Dr. Radhakrishnan, very noted philosopher country, written by his son. So I remember one critical sentence from that book. My memory has gone weak, but this sentence is so important that I memorize it. And I have jotted down for you. And I quote, spiritualize the matter. And I repeat, spiritualize the matter and materialize the spirit. So interplay of matter and spirit. So everybody wants to have matter, that is physical, prosperity, physical prosperity, but it should be spiritualized.
True.
So the matter should be spiritualized and the spirit should be materialized. In other words, what he's talking about, what Dr. Radhakrishnan is talking about is the combination of the physical or general prosperity accompanied by an element of spirituality. And mind you, spirituality is not religiosity. It doesn't mean you go to a mandir every day and participate in the kirtan or this and that. Spirituality basically means following higher values of life, leading an ethical life, and that kind of a thing. So without spirituality, materiality doesn't matter, and without matter, spirit also doesn't matter. I'll give you a concrete example. If I were living in a slum, Bombay, where corona is rampaging, or I was living in a small hut on a dirty drain, I won't be talking of philosophy, I won't be talking of spirit, I won't be talking of higher values of life. So there has to be certain basic minimum standard in terms of facilities and physical comforts. And then you need not try to aspire for more and more and more. So after that, then you can divert your energies towards spirit and towards higher values of life. This is what I mean.
True. I was reading the other day on Rig Veda, and one of the sayings in Rig Veda said, if you want to enjoy the fruits and happiness of life, take up systemic planting of trees. How would you like to connect this, with the essence of life for people to understand? It's not only a question of physically planting trees, but it's more of a message. How do you read this message?
Well, I appreciate the physical part of it. Trees are very necessary for our survival.
True.
If it has to survive, we have to plant more trees and we have to safeguard and protect those which already exist. So therefore, it's not only a spiritual message, it's also a message for survival of the planet and well-being of the human race. You see, you must have known about Upanishads. So, our sages, our rishis, what would they do? Ashram. They would go to the third stage of life. They would go to the jungles and spend their life there and try to attain, spirituality, moksha or whatever. So jungles or one or trees have played a very important life in Hindu life or Indian life, or for that matter, anywhere, any climate and any region. So they are very essential. So I take it very seriously. And the degradation of the forest that is happening, or deforestation that is happening, is not only in India, world over. You see TV channels and you see what's happening in the Southern America, Brazil and all these countries. So, the trees are being destroyed, the forests are being destroyed. That is going to cause disaster to the entire human race.
True. I agree with you that physical plantation of trees is very critical, and fortunately, because of the lockdown, we are able to benefit some kind of purity in the environment, at least now. When I was listening to you, you talked about your growth. When you talked about your growth, you talked about the way things were coming up every now and then, and every time, even when you were planning to retire, then you decided to study law and all. So there was another thing which came up, and many of my speakers said that one must invest in oneself if one wants to induce growth and happy living. Do you also believe in this?
Well, investment has two implications here in the sense that which talking about. One is investing in your physical health, which means
Correct.
the age comes when you have to look after yourself in the physical sense. Well, as I'm concerned, apart from my, in my college days and all, I was padhaku kind of a boy, and there were no facilities, sports facilities in the village and all that. But after getting the service, I played all kind of games, did a lot of horse riding. All my service career, I did a lot of horse riding, played a lot of tennis. Now I'm 71, my knees are a little weak now, but every day, hail, rain, or sunshine, even corona or no corona, I take morning walks, and this is one part of it, investment in myself. And second is investing in developing your brain. I hate spending money. I'm the most miserly person. A bookshop, and I become most profligate because if books are with you, you don't need any other company. So I find reading books and scriptures also, Vedas you refer to. I've got 20 volumes. I've gone through done rapid reading of all the 1 lakh shlokas, richas of Vedas, but I don't claim that I understood them. I have got very ancient volumes, 18 volumes of Puranas. I'm trying to get Upanishads also. I go through, not very systematically. I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person to know what a heritage is. So investment in physical sense, I mentioned, investment in evolving yourself intellectually and spiritually. In that sense, yes, investment should be there. But not in terms of going to the 5-star hotels and spending money, which is a plate of 4,000 plate. It will not only wreck your health, but also wreck your purse.
True. Another thing which I wanted to ask before I have a few more questions. One is that you think is growth the only evidence of life? Is growth the only evidence of life?
Well, I find nothing wrong with growth, so long as you are not what you call obsessed with the material growth. More money, more money, more money. That kind of growth I would not approve of, or I'll not for. But growth in the sense in which I have spoken, why not? Why should you be static? Why should you stand still? Why not learn? Learning is also growth. Physical fitness is also growth. Growth in that, but not in terms of, some millionaire wants to become billionaire and billionaire wants to become trillionaire. Not in that sense. Because in our Shastras, you see, there are 4 things. Dharma, Arth, Kam, Moksha. Earth is very important. So without earth, things are not possible. Even dharma is not possible, because if you put Tirthan, for that also you need money. So making money for your needs is not a bad idea at all. So this is how it, and therefore you should grow. True. Another sentence I want to mention here is that I was born poor, and therefore I'm telling you, nobody should be proud of his poverty. Try to become rich through legitimate means. Don't become a smuggler to become rich, but hard. Become a scholar, become an inventor, become a great soldier. So long as you can earn money through legitimate means, everybody should be rich. Why not? True. I agree. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm running my law firm. Good. So just a second. Yeah. So when we're living in uncertain times, and a lot of uncertainty is there, which is there happening all the time. Not only because COVID is there, but a lot of uncertainty is there. And because of that uncertainty, we have been seeing in economic frameworks, if you look at last 100 years, every year, every decade, there have been different kinds of uncertainties which happen. So it is not just COVID, but otherwise.
So from that perspective, how do you see, and you have seen ups and downs in your personal life, you have seen ups and downs in professional countries, different frameworks altogether in the last 50, 60 years of your functional, rememberable lifespan. How do you see the next 6 months to an year shaping up, in your opinion?
I'm very optimistic about it. You see, planet is getting overburdened. We are far too many for the planet to be a burden. And Malthusian theory of population, I don't support it fully, but it's coming into play. So the rampaging corona and other things, natural disasters, nothing infestation. हिंदी में बोलते हैं धरती पे जब भार बढ़ जाता है तो कुदरत कुछ ना कुछ करती है, हो रहा है. But we need to have a balance. It will pass over. And therefore, what I say is, what Gita says, नियतम कुरु कर्म त्वा. अपना काम करते रहिए. कर्म ज्यायो ही अकर्मणः. ना कर्म करने से कर्म करना अच्छा है. कर्म क्या है? जो सही चीज है, जो डॉक्टर बताते हैं वो करते रहिए. What your doctor advise you, follow that and leave the rest to God. That's all.
Correct. No, I agree with you. You know, what has been the key success mantra in your life for your success, for your happiness? More important for me is that positivity which you have in your life and the happiness. What has been that success mantra for that?
Well, if you call me a successful person, and frankly speaking, for myself, with my background, no, I've gone quite high in life. There's only one mantra: work, work, work. Integrity, integrity, integrity. There's no other mantra.
Correct. So that is important. I think that's very, very critical. You know, given the kind of uncertainties we were discussing earlier, how do you go about celebrating life?
Every day is a day of celebration, so long as you have you follow Gautam Buddha's Madhyam Marg. If you follow Madhyam Marg, every day is a day of celebration. You know, take pleasure in small things in life. Don't just too high. That's how it is. You know, celebration doesn't mean that you go to a 5-star hotel and spend 10 lakh rupees or something, as people do these days. I hate that.
True.
Better to have spent that money in feeding migrant labor rather than squandering money on already overfed people. So therefore, my celebration of life is very simple. Do the right thing, follow Madhyam Marg, enjoy all facets of life bit by bit, but in a very medium kind of fashion. Don't go overboard, and balanced fashion. That's how it is.
True. You know, you mentioned about happiness also, and I've been talking about it. Large number of countries are actually trying to induce happiness in their frameworks and their systems, and it's become important that they have happiness. A couple of countries have also tried to have an index or create some factors, like Bhutan has one. Some of them have created ministries of happiness or ministries of loneliness. Different countries have ministers also for it. Now, you know, it's a difficult task for various governments to do. But then even Sarkozy gave this project to Amartya Sen to create a happiness index. How do you, working in the government, have worked for the government for such a long time, and now outside the government you're working for such a long time also? Now, how do you feel, or what should the governments do, not only in India, but globally, so that they could have a smooth induction of growth with happy living, not just growth, but a growth which induces happy living?
See, happiness in the sense which we are talking about, and the concept of happiness in Bhutan, I'm aware of it, can't be quantified, but all the same, the concept is wonderful. Government's role is limited to creating circumstances whereby there is substantial or adequate economic growth.
Correct.
Government's role is only this much. Government can't go beyond that. Because as I said, a basic threshold should be available to every person, every citizen living in a country. If that basic threshold is not available, then all concept of happiness become futile. So government's role is limited to this. But the real happiness comes from your happy family. And how to have a happy family is partly a matter of luck and partly a matter of management. If you're too demanding, then you won't have a happy family. If you are too subservient, perhaps you will lose your ego or self-esteem and you will not be happy. So as I said, my understanding is part, part is partly a matter of management and partly a matter of luck. Because in family life, luck plays a very important part.
No, I agree. I agree with you. You know, when we as young people, even the youth today, when they read newspapers, they see television, they see everything very flashy, everyone being talked about very flashy, rich, powerful politicians, industrialists, celebrities. So there is a perspective which they get is that life is all about money and power. Do you think life is all about money and power?
See, one, young people should not see too much of TV shows. It spoils their eyes and distorts their perspective of life. That's why you are raising.
True. Yes. Yes.
So one shouldn't see TV more than 2 hours a day, and more than half of this time should be spent only on information. That is news around the world and things like that. Rest is all, I don't want to use a very harsh word, bakwas. And particularly 300 odd TV channels, maybe more than 300 TV channels that you have in India. This is a trash. I'm totally against it. So I digressed a bit. This trash, it has some kind of demonstration effect, which is very damaging. It's a very negative kind of influence. So young people should keep away from this. They should be grounded. It's better to spend time on classics, standard books that you have rather than on TV.
True. No, I agree with you. Although it is not a matter which you have dealt with in economic front, but you are an avid reader, and you know that on economic growth front, there have been a lot of debate going on, and there has been a debate that some agencies say we are going to have a growth rate of 1.9%, and some say we're going to have a growth rate of 4%. Now they started saying we may have a growth rate, negative growth rate, but much better than most countries. So it keeps going on. I'm not looking at those figures per se. But as a person who has seen rural India, a person who comes from the very small, basic township in this country, who has seen life in all different zones in this country, and has known the potential of this country and the youth and the potential of this country, what is your perspective of growth for people?
See, I saw interview of Kamath, that famous banker. And not that I'm boring the idea of what I'm going to tell you. I already had these views, but I totally agreed with him. One, we shouldn't bother too much about the figure. Going to be 5%, 6%, this is going to be negative. We all know that Corona has disrupted all our economic systems, not only of India, around the world. So growth rate, the manner we understand it, is going to be negative, but doesn't matter. There's nothing that you can do about it. You have to live with it. Correct. It is also a fact that we will bounce back after the Corona is over. So therefore, I hold a very optimistic view about it. There are falls and, there are ebbs and tides. This time it's tide will also come. So therefore, figures according to me are not important. Now, another point is about rural India. Kamath says, and I know it for certain, Corona has not affected, and I say not affected, rural India in the sense in which it has affected urban India. If I simplify, I can say that basically Corona is an urban problem. It's a problem, acute problem in urban conglomerations. Rural areas, my district, Alwar, I keep on talking to my brothers. They say, sir, पूरे जिले में एक दो को कोरोना हुआ है, वो अलवर गया था, शहर में गया था. ये शहर की बीमारी है. The rural economy is totally unaffected. The rural sector is not going to suffer. Urban sector, of course, you can say that rural people, migrant workers, they come to cities and all that, their livelihood is affected. Yes, there's no doubt about it. So rural area per se is safe. Urban area adversely affected, but it's not going to last. No pleasure is permanent. No pain is permanent. This is a pain. but it's not a permanent pain. It will go away. Let's have patience.
True, true. I agree with you completely on that aspect. And, I will be opening up the house for questions from the others in another 5-10 minutes. But then I had two more questions from you. I faced this problem myself as a youth when I went to the United States, and I call it the problem of the plenty. And the problem with plenty is that, when I went to the US, for the second day, I went to buy bread, and then they put me on the shelf and I saw 50 different kinds of bread. Then I ran back to my room, called my mother and asked, what is my bread made of, what I eat? So there are so many options which was confusing. So today we are living in that similar world where every one of us is perplexed with, and especially the youth, is perplexed with everything too much in plenty, like you talked about televisions also. In such circumstances, what will be your advice to the youth and the students?
I would like everything to be plentiful in this world. But two cautions. One, that if you have 50 types of bread, don't overeat. It will spoil your health. Preserve it for another day. If not for yourself, for a poor man who doesn't have bread to eat. So, you see, deficiencies of things like India is a poor economy. India has always been a poor country. This is my belief as a student of economics. People talk of India being a Sone ki chidiya, golden bird and all. And the per capita income being higher at bus times than any other country. Well, according to me, they are myths. India was always an overpopulated country, and it was always a poor country. There were feudal lords who enjoyed life. There were poor people who suffered. So therefore, I welcome prosperity, and I welcome plenty of bread, other things. But don't waste, don't overeat. Save it for somebody else who doesn't have it.
True, but how does the youth do it? I can do it a little bit. You have such a long experience of life, so you are able to make choices better decisions and choices. But as a youth, like you get free internet today. So everyone is on the mobile all the time on internet. You get free channels. You're switching over television instead of the 2 hour, they move on to spending 4 or 5 hours. Now, given how do the youth do? Yeah.
I'll not call them stupid because it's a strong word. They need to be guided.
Yes, they need to be guided. Okay, good. Now, I wanted to come back to your case studies, stories which you did mention of, but you did not speak. If you could share some of them where you had an happiness which you gained out of it, and we could see that growth come out. So if you could share some of those anecdotes, stories from your lifespan.
You're talking of the criminal cases that I investigated?
Yes, the criminal cases you talked about, and some of them you said you would like this time. Yeah.
I don't want to brag, but I'm an old man. I can brag a bit. We won the world to have investigated 3 hijacking cases. 2 of 1984, the last one of this Kandahar hijacking. A unique distinction. Then I happened to investigate Dhyan Singh assassination case, human bomb, blowing up the chief minister in Punjab and 17 others. He was holding his car, precincts of the secretariat, the porch of the secretariat. So, special plane, director CBI, judicial director, and myself and the whole team. I was joint director at the time. The director, Ms. Vijay Ramarao, had full faith in me, entrusted the case to me. So we were all very tense because the locus of bomb and the explosion was not known. Nothing was known. Everything was unknown because the human bomb had perished in the explosion. So we were lucky to get a breakthrough on 4th day. And lo and behold, another 4 or 5 days, the entire case was worked out. Aman, you can't believe the kind of happiness that it gives you. Not misplaced pride, I'm not saying, but the internal happiness because you have got a job, you have been given a job and you have done it. Otherwise, chief minister, incumbent chief minister being growing up. And mind you, no police officer is a god. Every case can't be detected. People should understand. I was pitying the people of this country, particularly newspaper channels, when they're saying, oh, Vikas Dubey has not been arrested, 80 hours have gone by and 100 hours have gone by. They're simply stupid. They don't know in such a vast country. You see, looking for a person is like looking for a needle in a stack of hay. So lucky that he was caught one way or the other. It's different matter. So therefore, there's no guarantee that a big case or a small case will be worked out. So you work. And investigator, only having 5 senses is not good enough. An investigator needs to have 6 senses. 6 senses. 6th sense. 6th sense comes out of this, my theory. It comes out of sincerity of purpose and experience. If you have vast experience and sincerity of purpose, then some kind of intuitive knowledge you develop. When the spot of crime and other evidence throws up nothing, no clues, then it is the investigator's 6th sense. There are 100 lines of investigation. He says, not this, not this, not this, let's follow this, and it works. So, some lucky investigators, and I've always been considered a lucky investigator, develop that 6th sense and comes over a period of time. So this is how it is. And human rights cases and, so many other, another important is ISRO espionage case, so-called espionage case. Now, the poor man, Nambi Narayan, he was arrested by the Kerala police at the instigation of Intelligence Bureau. Stupid fellows. He was put in jail. Other scientists were put in jail. He was the father of the space program, the country, and he was put to jail because of their malfeasance and because of their stupidity. Investigation came to me. So I was the head of the team. I had picked up about 30 officers speaking all kind of languages, Malayalam and Tamil, this and that. So we interrogated these fellows who were under arrest, and we found that nothing was clicking. In Rajasthan, we say tana tan. अभी चारों तरफ से चारपाई होती है ना, उसके चारों पाए जब तक नहीं होते उसको टनाटन नहीं बोलते हैं. I found that nothing was टनाटन. So first day, senior officer from Delhi asked me, why don't you arrest him? I said the case is overblown. Second day evening, he asked me, have you not still arrested them? I said the case is false. So the director himself, he says, shall I come over and satisfy myself personally? I said, most welcome. So this is how it is. There are many other cases, there was one case where Chandraswamy, he was the helm of affairs at that time. He was being suspected for the elimination of the family of an income tax officer. The allegation was that the income tax officer concerned, I'm not naming him, he was looking into the income tax affairs of Chandraswamy, and Chandraswamy could have a play. And this case was registered in a police station in Delhi, and next day the case came to us through the Ministry of Home Affairs. So I worked on that case. You know how it works. I was sitting in a room with about 20 officers with me, talking only about this case, and case had just come last evening. And lo and behold, I used to keep an open door. And a constable driver of the CBI rushed into my room. I was joint director. I won't maintain any protocol in these matters. Everybody is free to come. So he says, sir, सुना है आपको ये केस तफ्तीश को मिला है? मिला है. सर कल दोपहर को इतने बजे जब मैं फलां जगह डिफेंस कॉलोनी के पास में आ रहा था, तो मैंने एक आदमी देखा जो गाड़ी को, सफेद रंग की गाड़ी को छोड़ के सड़क के किनारे खड़ा करके भाग गया. कहीं ये तो नहीं है आदमी इन्वॉल्व इसमें. So we adjourned the meeting. All of us, 20 of us, went to defense colony, looked for the car, found a jurisdiction of the police station. Car would have been removed to the police station. Went first to the defense colony police station. We asked them whether they have recovered any car. They said no. Then I said, this is the spot that I've been told. Which police station jurisdiction on that? They told us adjoining police station. We went to the adjoining police station, and lo and behold, that car, white car, was located, was parked there. So SHOs in Delhi are never found there. There was a head constable. Asked him, "Kahan se baramad kiya?" They said, "We recovered so and so place." So I said, "Isme kya mila?" Ke sahab, 2 pente mili, 2 pent. So pent ko maine nikal ke dekha. I am 5'10". So pent was taller than me. So I said, "Man is about 6 feet high." I saw the girth of the pant, and I'm a lean person. So the girth was not too much for a man of having 6 feet height or over 6 feet height. The girth was almost as mine. I said, he's a man from Haryana, because they're tall and their girth is not because Punjabis become very fat, too soon. So this was a theory. And then we opened the the bonnet of the car. And we found that the car was very old, but had been freshly painted. I didn't notice, but one of my SPs, Yadav, he's now DG somewhere in this country. So he noticed that the battery was new, engine was old, car was old, everything was old, but the battery was new. And there was a small chit over there mentioning the name of a shop from where the battery had been purchased. That was a clue. And we straight away went to that shop. And we asked the shopkeeper, did you sell any battery last 1 or 2 days? He says, yes. Who? He says he's a son of a excise officer of our area. We asked him, how tall is the boy? He says, sir, taller than you. So he ultimately we started searching for the boy. The boy had run away to Meerut. We sent it and caught him. By the evening, everything was out. And the kind of happiness that gives you, nothing. You give me $1 trillion, I'll not be as happy as I was on the detection of this case. This is a matter of professional pride. Every time you don't succeed, but most you succeed if you have tenacity, if you have sincerity of purpose, and if you have team with you whom you treat as a team.
Correct.
I may be wrong. But when 10 heads are there, all the 10 heads can't go wrong in blind investigations.
Correct. No, that is why I wanted you to come out with these case studies, because it's important, the real life case studies that you have solved or unsolved, whichever. But
these studies I'll document. In another about 3 months' time, my book on RTI is going to come out. First, so then I'll start working on this.
That will be nice. I think that will be a great work which will be there for people to learn from. I will now open the house for questions, and we will take up some questions from people. We still have 10 minutes. Fortunately, we're moving very much in time today. And I would request if people can, I do see Mohammad Halim Khan Sahab, who has been Secretary Disinvestment Finance, who is here with us. I do also see Rekha Jagannathan, who was my last week's speaker, but she's also a member of Karnataka State Planning Board. So I will request if they have some question. I remember Rekha ji wanted to say something or ask. I will go to them. And if anyone else wants to ask or say something, please, if you can raise your hand or open your video.
Good evening, everyone in IIF, and then Aman Agarwal ji and ML Sharma ji. It's really very heartening for me to see the Central Information Commissioner here. I wonder, well, I'm sure all of you know what an Information Commissioner is. He's bigger than an IFS actually, because Information Commissioner gives all information. He's to be ready with all information for everyone. I think it would be useful if you would have given us just one case study in your experience as the Information Commissioner. And the other question is, you repeated twice that you are not religious, but you are spiritual. So can I request you to differentiate between the two in your life and your efforts to remain spiritual and not religious? In New Zealand, actually, atheism is their policy, and they insist that they are atheists but happy to be atheists. I don't know what your experience is towards spirituality without religiosity. Kindly explain. And I have plenty of questions, but two are enough.
I'm glad that you asked me this question. The first question about my RTI. Yeah. You see, I kind of scripted an order political parties, wherein I held that political parties are public authority under section 2H of the RTI Act, meaning thereby that they fall in the domain of the RTI Act, and therefore when questions are asked about the functioning of the political parties, the concerned political parties through their PIOs are supposed to answer those questions. Halim Saab is here. He was secretary in the commission. Yes. Order was written by me, but of course it was a decision of the full bench, including Mr. Mishra, SM Mishra, and that lady, I'm forgetting her name right now. So we passed that order. Now, unfortunate thing is that this order has not been challenged in any court, either High Court or Supreme Court. But at the same time, this order has not been implemented by any of the parties. And that's the malady of the system. Commission, as I understand, doesn't have the powers to have its own orders implemented. It doesn't have contempt powers, nor there is any mechanism in our RTA Act to have the order implemented. So everything is left to the good conscience and goodwill of the public authorities concerned. Now, in this case, political parties don't accept their public authorities in terms, and therefore they are not implementing. So this is one order which makes me a very happy person, because you see, it's good enough to irritate all these people who tend to become, who project themselves as leaders and are destiny makers and this and that. They want you to be transparent, but they themselves are not prepared to or willing to become transparent.
Yeah, that's the paradox.
For this, so since there are other questioners, so therefore I'll be short. Second is spirituality and religiosity. Well, by religiosity, I mean, ghanti bajana, mandir jana, ye karna, man ka puchna, I call it that way. I find nothing wrong with that, but I'm talking from my perspective. I don't do all this. But spirituality, I said, basically, as I understand, and my meaning may not be 100% correct, my understanding, it is adhering to the higher value of life, including righteous conduct. This is what I mean by spirituality. This is a difference, which means ritualistic part, spending 3 hours and doing puja. I'll better read something, or I'll try to help somebody in these hours, or I do some physical activity rather than spending 3 hours and doing, ghanti and all that. So this is how I look at it, and that's all.
Thank you very much. I just have one more question, which I request Professor Aman Agarwal to allow me to ask the question. Now, which would be enlightening for everyone, I'm sure. Now, you said growth should continue even in old age. This becomes a question of competition to the youth. So I think the elderly should move away, shun growth, and start giving back to the society, and then move towards wantlessness, like Dadabhai Nauroji said. I don't know what you feel about it. Growth should stop at becoming veterans, and after that, we should give back to the youth and try supporting the society.
See, give back is a very commonly used word. Yeah. People who use this word too often, they give back money. They give back nothing to the society. It's become fashion to use this expression back. I'm giving back and all that. You see, you can give anything to anybody only when you're in a position to give. Now, how do you become in a position to give? You are in a position to give only when you acquire knowledge, or you generate wealth. Only then you can give back. So in old age, so long as the God helps you to work, you should acquire knowledge. You should impart knowledge to others. You should acquire wealth and spend that money, whole money, because I'm not a billionaire or trillionaire. Part of it I'll spend on myself, my family, and part I can part with, which I, in a subtle manner, also do. So giving back means this: keep on working, keep on working.
Yes.
Grow materially. I say that. I've said earlier that nobody should be proud of one's poverty. I've seen poverty from close quarters. So I'm not very proud of it. And therefore, try to keep it away so long as you can do it through legitimate means.
Yeah. That's right. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'll go to Mohammad Halim Khan sir, if he has a question or a comment. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me, Sharma ji?
Sir, you can't ask any question.
No,
on my behalf.
No, I'm not going to ask you any question. I just didn't want to miss this opportunity to see you, listen to you, and I mean it gives me a lot of motivation that you continue to be as forceful, as articulate, and as probably blunt also. whatever you want to say. So it's a really very insightful to say that you can only give when you have something to give. And I think if most of us are, I mean, I support you wholeheartedly, though Professor Aman knows that I don't like the word spirituality. But when you say that you should give back to the society, and you can give back only when you have something. So either knowledge, wealth, time, contribute, I mean, helping somebody, reconciling to the, ups and downs of life. So, I mean, if that is the spirituality, I think I will convert tomorrow and start talking about the spirituality. Because otherwise, it looks to me very selfish thing to say, कि भाई ठीक है, अब I have done everything and now I have become spiritual. So I will go sit in a corner, do and try to relate with myself, etc. I really, so when somebody talks about spirituality in those terms, I become uncomfortable. And probably I think I'm yet to develop that intellectual wherewithal to understand what people talk of in spirituality. So I mean, 3 cheers to you and your definition of spirituality.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Seeing you after a couple of years, we can see each other more often.
Yes, of course. But then even now the gymkhana is closed, so that option is also not.
But both of you live very close by to each
Yes,
other, not very
yeah,
far away from each other. I will like
Thank
to
you.
go to another dear friend of mine who has joined us from Sweden. Bharat has been there. Bharat Barot has been sitting here from Sweden. He's an Indian descendant in the sense that he was born in Africa, but he has an Indian heritage. And I've been a good friend of his for almost 20 years. He's now retired, leading a retired life. Bharat, if you could kindly unmute yourself and ask a question, please, or a comment, whatever you have. Bharat, if you're able to hear me, could you unmute yourself, please? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't follow the whole speech of our members who have been invited, but what I heard, it does make sense, most of it. And of course, the last point of sharing, if one has something to share. There was a Swedish critical literature writer who wrote once, there are many who only share the sun and the rain and nothing else. Everything else remains in the brain. It was a critique to the society. But I think actually it's the action that one takes. We should coordinate with the mind. And of course, it's easy to say and difficult to do. But there are people who are committed, and they do involve in different type of issues and dedicate their life to it. There are not many, but there are few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you for that comment, Bharat, and that perspective of sun and rain. It's a very interesting quote which is there, that's something which everybody shares. In fact, we come to know some things which we never actually realize, which are our day-to-day things. But then, like Mr. Sharma talked about the fact that we need to plant trees, we need to be taking care of the environment. We breathe the oxygen, but we don't take care of it, and we feel it's free, so we just abuse it the way we do. So it's very important. I would like to thank Mr. Sharma. If there's any closing remark or any comment you want to make before we end for today, Mr. Sharma.
No, be positive, be optimistic. Pain is not permanent, as pleasure is not. you know, the evening is always followed by morning and
Correct.
morning evening. So
Yes.
is a, Kal Chakra. So wait for better times. Don't be depressed or unhappy when a little bad time comes to you personally or globally or nationally. Thank you.
True. No, thank you very much for that message, because that is something which we actually started this activity on the 15th of April with, is to bring in that perspective from people's life and that positivity, because there was so much of negativity when I was sitting home, switching televisions and seeing news. It was so much of negativity when we thought that why don't we do something, at least try and do a little bit of our own way in terms of giving out some knowledge and talking about positivity. I will just take 1 second more before we end for today to let people know what we have in hand for them going in the next few days. And then we will end the session today. I would like to inform everybody that we have a virtual conference summit, which we are hosting on the healthcare and economics, which is there, which will be there going forward. And apart from that, we have another thing which we have scheduled is another conference which is going to be on the 8th of August, which is on research, which we are again doing on 8th of August. So these are both paper-based conferences, but then we would be having specialists from all over. I have spoken to some international agency experts as well, who would be addressing both these forums coming on the 25th of June and the 8th of August. We are also going to schedule 2 series on books written by Dr. B.P. Singh, the 14th Governor of Sikkim, and who is again a mentor to me, on Bodh Gaya, and one more of recent books which he has written, and revisited those books. So we will be announcing those dates in the coming weeks. One is going to be in July itself, end of July. The other one would be in August. So we thought I'll just announce that and let everybody know that we are going to schedule that. And the schedule for this week and the next week we'll be announcing tonight and tomorrow onwards. I would like to thank everybody for joining us, and especially my uncle and my father-like figure, Mr. Sharma, to have spared his time, to have taken time out to go on a public forum. On personal basis, we've had lots of occasions. I've got so many stories of his, listening to him and learning from him. But then going on a public forum, it was such a pleasure to have you here and welcome you here. Namaskar.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskar. Jai Hind and Vande Mataram.
Jai Hind.